So my journey with music has pretty much been all my life. When I was a kid, I was really just like a lover of music, all different kinds of music. My dad grew up and he loves Hawaiian music, local music. So like a lot of Al Crater Boys and, good stuff like that. My mom is a kid of like the 60s and 70s. So she was into different stuff than my dad. She was into like Queen and Aerosmith and, like kind of hard rock and stuff. So there's always kind of a big diversity in just the music in my house, but I was never really interested in actually playing. I just kind of liked music. So I got into playing later on in life. I'm a self-taught guitar and bass player. And that really kind of happened when I was like 18 to 20. And so that's when I started playing. But even before that, I would help out some of my friends. I grew up on Maui, so some of them had like small punk bands and they would do shows at people's houses and stuff. So I would just go to those. I'd be so, I thought it was so cool, that whole scene. And then when I was here on Oahu for college, one of my friends was in a couple of bands, and so I helped him run some of his sound. So really I was a sound guy before I was an instrumentalist. And so everything took off. I was teaching myself and everything, but everything took off for me really when I became a Christian, when I became a believer in Jesus, and I started having opportunity to play in the church. And in the church, it was the biggest point of growth for me just as a musician, because I was surrounded by people who could like teach me things and actually show me the right way to do things. And just guide me, and to be in that really social atmosphere where there's learning and there's guidance, like that for me was a big thing. So I'm a huge believer in having anybody, whether you're a kid or an adult, if you have an interest in music, starting out in church is, in my opinion and in my experience, it's the best place to do it because it's safe. People are friendly most of the time, and it's just it's such a supportive learning environment, and people are there to help you grow, not just spiritually, but also in the gifts that you have. And if music is one of those things that you're either gifted in or you just have an interest in, gifts can be built up too. So for me, it's like I'm not one of those guys who is just naturally, when I was 5 years old, I picked up a guitar and I shredded a solo. Like that's never been me. I've had to work really hard just to be where I'm at. And but the church was really, really a great place to help me grow my skills. The self-taught route that way is kind of impersonal, and I think nowadays, books and everything have been replaced by like YouTube and music apps, and those things are really valuable. Like I'll always hop onto YouTube if I need to figure something out, or I can't figure something out, or I just want to learn something. So it's a resource that's there and it's great. But the kind of digital mentor, if you will, really can't replace an actual person, an actual mentor. It's important to have peers who can mentor you and kind of help you build and you help them grow, but also getting people who are ahead of you and having the courage to ask them just for some input and some guidance is so important. When you want to get good at anything, you have to put time, you have to put sweat, blood, and tears into it. When it comes to learning, I think especially guitar as opposed to another instrument, there's a lot of discomfort. The strings, they hurt your fingers, you have to build up calluses. That stuff just takes time. And then the coordination, your hands are doing two different things. So there's just so much that makes you feel kind of inadequate, because it's such a foreign thing. I watched a lot of interviews of my, my guitar heroes, and just like hearing about how they had to push through and had to keep going to get better. That stuff has been really helpful for me. Real great musicians work at it. Like you won't find any great musician out there who hasn't put in the time and the work. Jimmy Page, lead guitarist in Led Zeppelin. I just remember listening to that stuff when I was a kid. And again, when I was a kid, I wasn't like, oh man, I want to learn how to do that. I just loved like the sounds, and the power of the rock, right? So Jimmy Page was a big one for me. When I have younger students, I really am looking to see what do they love about music and what do they love about their particular instrument, and how can I really build that, because that's what kind of helps motivate you and gives you that sense of encouragement, and having fun while you're doing it, you know. So I think those two things, you know, it's like a mixture of grit and hard work, but it's also finding the joy and the really the excitement, you know, in music, and the thing that motivates you and encourages you to keep going. You know, I've played a G chord a jillion times, right, in my life, but when someone's learning how to play and they can't play it, and then they get it right the first time, and they, you know, all 6 notes ring out, and there's just that, you know, their face lights up, and they have that sense like, oh my gosh, like I did it, right? I played a G, man, like that's awesome, right? I remember when I got over that, my sore fingers and everything, and I learned how to play chords and switch chords. How stoked I was about that, just in my bedroom with nobody to congratulate me. When I first became a Christian and I went to a young adults service, they were playing these songs for worship, and they were so modern, and I never knew music like that existed in church, and most of it was Hillsong and Hillsong United stuff, when Hillsong United was the early stuff. And you know, it's like they had like 2-3 guitars, electric guitars on stage. I mean, it sounded like the music I was listening to. And so realizing that, you know, music in the church was not just like organs and stuff like that. That was a big inspiration for me, you know, and I was just so drawn to that, and it's such a central part of not just my musical life, but in my faith life as well. I kind of fell into teaching like really naturally. It wasn't really something when I was a kid, I thought, I want to be a music teacher. I don't know if anybody actually thinks that. And so just kind of showing younger people how to play certain things, or how to do certain things, and just develop musicianship was really my first experience in teaching. And then when I was the worship leader over our main services, then there were adults, and not just, you know, people who were in junior high school. And so that was a different dynamic for me, because I did have to show and teach some of these adults how to do certain things. And so that experience of teaching younger people, and then teaching peers, and then also people who are older, again, it was a very natural thing. Like I wasn't really aware even, I think, that it was a part of my journey. But all of that has really helped to shape my philosophy as a teacher. I found this really great passion and really great enjoyment musically in actually teaching people and actually showing people. And I want to say that it's either equal to, or maybe even a little bit higher than just wanting to perform. There's something about helping someone along that just really kind of grew in me. And I think a lot of times, like I was saying, in music, we just think about we sort of imagine what we want to do, whether it's on stage or something like that. And learning that, hey, you know what, maybe like my path in music is a teacher, or maybe my path in music is not to be on the stage guy. Maybe I'm just a really good songwriter. And there's a lot of work for that too, right? People who just write songs, or people who produce or arrange. Like all of those, there's so many different things in music that I wasn't aware of, because when you learn, you're just learning how to play. But there's so many things that you can go down. And so I think learning all those things and just kind of dipping your toes in like every opportunity you have to learn something is really important. I would say a good thing to do is play some songs that they like, and don't say anything about it before I just let them listen to it, and then ask them after the fact, hey, what stood out to you? Well, was there any instruments that stood out to you more than the other? And they'll be able to say, right? Some people might say, oh, it's the bass, you know, the bass line or something. Some people might say it's the drums. Some people might just say it's the singing, it's just the voice. And so that's a really, I think, helpful way. And I have 4 kids, right? So I watch kind of all of them, and my second son, he's always like doing percussive stuff on everything. So I thought, I think this kid might be a drummer. So we've been trying to get him to get into that, and I think those things, like those little cues, you know, are really, you just kind of have to look for those things. Along the way, you feel like, oh, you know, I'm like a guitar player, but I really found out that I like the drums. Like, that's okay, you know, music is just a journey, and so it's not like whatever you start with, you have to end with, you know. I'm really excited for that with students who are learning how to play at this particular music academy, because we do want to focus on those things as well, right? It's not just skill, but it is a way to build up those things like confidence, leadership, character. Those things are so important, I think, for anybody to have. But as a musician, I think we should all have those things. If I had that interest in music at a younger age, I would, looking back on it, I would have loved to have someone just be that mentor and that guide for me. And I think because I never had that, there's this real sort of urgency for me to be that for somebody else. Because if I could have had that, I would have loved it. Maybe, I don't know in the moment I would have, but definitely looking back, I know, like, personally, just the benefit of that. And I would be like years ahead of where I am even now. As a parent, it is so important to just encourage a kid, whether they're playing the right notes or not, because just that sense of, my son, I can see it in his face, being like, oh, my dad thinks I'm doing a good job, and just him to go back into the room and play all the wrong notes, for another couple hours. That may not be the most comfortable thing for me as a parent, but I just know that it's working for him. It's really building that up in him. So as much as possible at home, just being a source of encouragement. I don't think we can learn anything in a healthy way without a healthy source of encouragement.